on Plugged In, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and YouTube. Social media is changing the way we communicate, influencing our lives in subtle and sometimes less subtle ways. From terror groups trying to recruit new members to troll factories trying to influence your vote. Technology is rapidly changing the global village. But is social media making us more isolated? And is government regulation really the solution? Plugged In asks, is it really social media or social manipulation? Hello and welcome to Plugged In. I'm Milar Sega, filling in for Greta Van Susteren. Well, have you looked at your smartphone lately? Well, chances are you're watching this episode of Plugged In on your phone. You may even be multitasking or texting messages or posting pictures from your last vacation. Well, whatever it is you're doing, the internet and social media are playing an increasingly large role in our collective obsession with our smartphones. We do it on average 80 times a day, at work, at play, and sometimes when we drive. But not only is that dangerous, health experts say our obsession with mobile devices may be hurting our eyes, our posture, and even our mental health. Psychologist Larry Rosen is co-author of The Distracted Mind.
We find that people are more and more anxious today, and they're often anxious about what some people call nomophobia, not having your mobile phone around or not being able to connect, or FOMO, fear of missing out.
Experts say social media is partly to blame. Dr. Hilary Cash says for some, Facebook and Instagram have become a modern-day panacea for loneliness.
They're seeking social connection through social media or their gaming communities or whatever. And the more time people spend online, the more depressed they become and anxious they become. It's not a solution for meeting our social needs.
Rather than connecting, Dr. Rosen says our obsession with our smartphones may be detaching us from our most important relationships.
So imagine that you're a normal adult and you're in a relationship. When you are supposed to be spending time with your significant other, you're often either thinking about what's on your phone or grabbing your phone and taking a look at it.
Dr. Cash says many of our patients only seek help when their lives start to unravel.
If they're adolescents, many of them are refusing to go to school. They're fighting with their parents. Sometimes the fights are so bad the police are called. Their physical health is suffering. Among the adults, they are failing out of college. They're failing at work, failing at relationships, isolated, depressed.
No one is really sure what the long-term impact will be to a new generation raised on mobile devices and smartphone screens. But we may soon come to realize that instead of bringing people together, the technological marvel we call touchscreens may actually be the reason why some of us feel isolated and out of touch. Is social media making us less social? And can we know when obsession turns to addiction? Dr. Petros Lavunas chairs the Department of Psychiatry at Rutgers New Jersey Medical School. He is also the Chief of Service at University Hospital in Newark. He has lectured extensively on the topic of addiction and has published 13 books, including self-help manuals, as well as textbooks on psychiatric disorders. He joins us now from our studio in New York. Thank you for joining us on Plugged In, sir.
Thank you very much for having me here.
I just learned a new word, nomophobia. Is it possible to become overly dependent on mobile devices to the point of addiction?
Yes, it is. You can certainly get to the very extreme of any behavior, certainly of being plugged in, and that can have significant mental health consequences. You can suffer from a full-blown addictive disorder. This being said, there are a lot of people who use the cell phone, a lot of people who use social media, the vast majority of people who use social media and do not get addicted. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, not everyone gets addicted to painkillers either. But you have categorized as you're sort of on the cutting edge of a new field of study for psychiatrists. You've categorized this affliction as sort of a technological addiction, and that includes all sorts of things from video games to porn. Tell us a little bit more about these various categories of addictions.
Yeah. They have different facets. You mentioned cyber sex and internet porn, but also online auctions like eBaying, also internet gambling, of course, video games. All these are technological addictions, but they do share a common theme, the having a life out of control, which is the hallmark of addiction. Something that's very, very similar with the substance use disorders like alcohol and heroin and cocaine, and it's something that we see with sexual compulsions, internet addiction, gambling, and the other behavioral addictions.
Well, when you talk about drug addiction, for example, or gambling addiction, it's because we're doing something. Is it the content on our smartphones that is addictive, or is it just the simple fact that you have everything you need all in your hand?
It can be a couple of things. One is the very activity of being on the internet, of being plugged in, that has become quite addictive. The other one is the content of what you choose to use the cell phone for. For example, the social media that we just discussed, getting connected with other human beings. So it could be either the activity itself or what it is that you're doing with the content of it. Either way, there are some people, the minority of people who use cell phones and social media, who will end up essentially ruining their lives because of that behavior.
Dr. Lavunas, what is it that happens to your brain when you can't seem to go even a day without clutching your mobile device or your smartphone? What happens to the chemistry of our brain when that happens?
All of us have a system in our brains. It's called the mesolimbic system. It lives right here, just above the spinal column, in the more primitive part of the brain. And what this system does, it scans the world at all times for things that are pleasurable, rewarding, and salient in our lives. Now, this is something that we all have, and we see things like food and sex, and we respond to them. Our dopamine level at that center skyrockets when we engage in pleasurable activities. Now, substance abuse and addictive behaviors like the technological behaviors can also hijack these pleasure-reward pathways of the brain, send the dopamine level at levels much, much higher than normal pleasurable activities, and end up getting the person addicted to a particular technological behavior.
So how do you go about treating that addiction? Is it the same way that you would treat a heroin addiction, for example? How would you go about it?
Three major components in all of addiction treatment. We have medications, we have psychotherapy and counseling, and we have 12-step programs. These are the three major things that we have. For the technological addictions, we have no medications. We've tried a few things, and there may have been some leads that possibly could be helpful in the future, but at this point, in 2019, we do not have safe and effective medications that will address a technological addiction. But we do have effective counseling and psychotherapy along the lines of cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, that do help patients who suffer from a technological addiction. The 12-step
go on, sir. I'm sorry.
The 12-step programs, there are some internet addiction, self-help groups, mutual help groups that model themselves along the lines of Alcoholics Anonymous. And at this point, they are very, very early in their development, so we're not quite sure how effective they will be.
I'm curious about this, Doctor. We are subjected to so much information daily. I'm wondering if you've ever looked at the psychological impact of so much bad news that we see in the media. Can we get too much bad news? Can we sort of become vicariously, say, traumatized by a mass shooting that happens thousands of miles away?
Yeah, we do get a lot of news. We don't only get a lot of bad news, we do get a lot of good news, we do also get a lot of cute news. Just alone, the little cats and the little dogs that are populating the internet have been engraved in our heads. So it is an information overload. You mentioned at the beginning of the program that we do not know the long-term consequences of this overload. Some of us think that it may be concerning. Some of us think that may be a good thing. It's way early to know, but there's no question that we are having a significant increase in information volume over the past few years. So we're plugged in.
Yeah, we are definitely plugged in almost 24/7. I always have my phone next to me wherever I am. Now, I'm curious as well, can your smartphone help you kick the habit? I mean, do they have apps for that, for example?
There are a few apps that are trying to address smartphone addiction, internet addiction. It is, of course, quite paradoxical in a way that you would use your very own cell phone to get over an addiction. But there are some of these apps that have been studied quite significantly and scientifically, and they have shown great results in the treatment of substance use disorders. So maybe by extension, they will be helpful for the technological addictions as well.
Well,
we don't know.
We are so happy to have been able to speak with you, Dr. Petros Lavounas. You are a pioneer in this field of study. Department of Psychiatry at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School. Dr. Lavounas, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we've seen how social media use has become widespread and at times even addictive and even viral. But it can also be extremely powerful and profitable depending on its content and its message. Take the so-called and relatively recent explosion of influencers. More on that from Plugged In's Greta Newsom.
Social media influencers are people who have built up their personal brands and audiences through their postings of creative and organic content. You may have already seen their posts on YouTube and Instagram. And the most successful often have a large number of followers who rely on their opinions. Brands and advertisers are always searching for ways to shape consumers' thoughts, behaviors, and buying habits. And with people around the world constantly on their phones, marketers can gain a large audience from a select group of influencers willing to push their products online. They can be celebrities, high-profile athletes, or just a media-savvy teenager who knows how to engage an audience. And we're talking about a lot of money. Depending on how many followers they have, social media influencers can earn several $100,000 for every post they make. Greta Newsom, VOA News, Washington.
And depending on the influencer and his or her reach, the rewards can be even larger than that. So much so that the title of social influencer has become a much sought-after career choice for internet-savvy people. And to tell us more about influencers, what they do, how they do it, and how they make money from it, we're joined by our VOA tech guru, Tina Trin, who joins us from our New York studio. Hi, Tina.
Hi, Mel.
Thank you so much for helping us out on Plugged In. Now, we've heard that being an influencer can be very lucrative, as you heard. Even more so if your last name happens to start with Kardashian or Jenner. But I guess my question to you is, what makes a good influencer?
Well, a good influencer is a person who is really engaged with their following. They take the time to interact with their followers. They are not just pushing a product, but really educating their followers on the ins and outs of a particular product, how they like to use it. And so the interaction is crucial there. Engaging your followers is crucial, and that's kind of what marketers are looking for when it comes to finding an influencer to kind of sell their particular product to target a particular demographic.
Right. So there are particular demographics, particular niches. So there are different kinds of influencers, aren't they? It's sort of like a major category. You can be very famous and I suppose pitch a product that way. How many different ways can you be an influencer? Are there different categories of it?
Yeah, there's so many areas that people are passionate about. A lot of the popular ones tend to fall into either food, fitness, beauty, entertainment.
Those would be the macro influencers, right? Celebrities,
yeah.
They become celebrities in their own media designations, right? There's micro influencers as well. What is a micro influencer, for example? Because we know what a celebrity influencer is. What does a micro influencer do? How do they get followed or become an expert?
So micro influencers have up to 1 million followers, anywhere between 100,000 and 1 million followers. And they, a lot of times they started and built their following kind of organically, whether they started doing makeup tutorials on YouTube and showing people, the best way to use a particular eyeshadow or how to really create a full makeup look. And so they're really passionate about their area of expertise, whether it's makeup or video games or yoga, it could be anything. And so they are real life people, and they're showing, brands that these are the users that are using your product, and here are the needs and feedback that we're getting, that I'm getting from my followers, and these are things that you should consider when you're developing your next, eyeshadow palette.
Right.
So it's been really amazing to see, people from Oklahoma in the middle of America, where there's, not a West Coast or East Coast metropolitan city, be able to really go online, pursue their passions, get creative about it, build a community around it, and then lo and behold, big brands come knocking on their door, and the next thing you know, they're able to launch their own makeup line, or even their own reality show.
So if they're passionate about what it is that they're pitching or that they're using, people trust them, right? So how do they make money from being an influencer? What's the equation here? How does one make a lot of money being an influencer?
Well, if you're a company and you have a new product coming out, you want to build awareness, you kind of are looking to influencers to build that awareness for you and to kind of be the authentic face of a brand, to give a brand a face. If you're a big corporate company, this is an easy way to target a particular demographic, whether it be, yoga, or foodies, or techies. And so you're going to go to an influencer and really see, how engaged they are with their following, and say, actually, why don't you partner with us and show your followers this product and use it in real life? And so they will partner with influencers, and influencers will then show their followers what their experience is like with a particular product, and say what they like about it and what they don't like about it, and they get a small fee for that. Well, if you're a big influencer, you actually can get a couple $100,000s.
Is this what we're seeing in advertising now? Is a lot more money being generated from it? Are advertisers spending more money, say, on influencers as opposed to, say, television or newspaper ads?
Definitely. We're seeing marketing people at major companies allocating a portion of their budget just to influencer marketing spending. So there's obviously numbers that are coming back that are saying this is worth investing in, because these influencers have authenticity. They're lending authenticity to our brand, potentially opening us up to new markets and new audiences. And it's showing in the increase in sales, hopefully, that they're getting out of this. So it is a different form of advertising, a new form of advertising, but it also comes with its own set of caveats. People are saying, and recent studies have found that anywhere around 15% of any influencers' followings are actually comprised of fake followers. So as we're getting more and more engaged with influencer marketing, you have to be a little bit more cautious about who exactly you're engaging with, and if they really are who they say they are.
I'm running out of time, Tina, but I just have this one question. I guess I wonder if one can share too much of oneself. Is there a downside to being an influencer?
There's definitely a downside. I mean, I think, the quickest way to feel bad about your own life is to open up Instagram. I mean, these are highly curated images that people are putting forth. They're living their best life always. And so when you have such a highlight reel, essentially, of one's life that you're putting out there constantly, the downside for both parties, I think, is this pressure constantly to live up to those expectations, whether you're the influencer or whether you're the follower. And I don't know about you, but I don't really have a yacht ready, to put 6 of my friends on and pose perfectly, and I don't really have a six-pack that I can lounge back in and with my drink and
But I guess we wish we all did, and that's the key, isn't it? That's where we want to be. So thank you so much, Tina Trin. That's been very insightful. The whole world, the magical world of influencers. Tina Trin, VOA Tech correspondent, thank you for joining us. Well, around the world, nearly everyone has heard of YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat, because along with Twitter, they are among the most popular social media outlets. But it all started with Facebook, which to this day remains the most dominant force in the social media universe. Plugged In's Larry Lazo has our report.
At nearly 3 billion users worldwide, Facebook is by far the leading social media network. Although Facebook was founded in the United States, it's grown into a global phenomenon. But along with the family-friendly content many people share on the site, there is also hate speech, as well as countless fake profiles. The question often asked is, has Facebook gotten too big?
I mean, if you think about it, they get, millions, billions of new posts a day, most of them some factual claim or some sentiment that nobody's ever posted before. And so to go through those and figure out which of these are actually misinformation, by any definition, which of these are false, which of these are intended to manipulate an electoral outcome, that's a huge challenge.
To combat the problem, Facebook says it has increased the number of fact-checkers to take down these profiles and other misinformation.
Having a system that people view as legitimate and basically fair, even when they don't agree with any individual decision that we've made, is extremely important.
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg testified before the United States Congress in 2018 to address, among other things, the company's handling of consumer data. And this year, Zuckerberg has met with government leaders from France and the United Kingdom to address their concerns about Facebook's privacy policies and how they're impacting its citizens. Some critics have called for Facebook to be dismantled, or at least regulated. But are those options realistic? For now, only one thing is almost certain. No one anticipated Facebook's growth when it was founded in 2004. Probably not even Mark Zuckerberg himself. Larry Lazo, VOA News, Washington.
Now, in July this year, the Federal Trade Commission slapped Facebook with a $5 billion fine for exposing user data to a political polling firm called Cambridge Analytica. Plugged In's Aya El Sadek tells us how your personal data may have been used to influence an election.
It all started with a personality quiz. But what the 300,000 people who took the quiz did not know was how much of their personal information would become an open book. Facebook says as many as 87 million users, most of them in the United States, had their data collected. And that information included name, hometown, work history, educational history, along with the Facebook likes of the targeted users and their friends. The collected data was then used by Cambridge Analytica, a political firm that advises political campaigns. The data may have been used to target voters in certain geographical areas or voters with similar political views. And U.S. lawmakers are still studying the data to find out how personal information from social media users was used to influence U.S. elections. Aya Sadek, VOA News, Washington.
Has Facebook become too big, too powerful for its own users? Our next guest, Sarah Miller, is Deputy Director at the Open Markets Institute. She's also co-chair of a group that calls itself Freedom from Facebook. She was a former policy advisor at the U.S. Treasury Department and served as VP for Communications at the Washington Center for Equitable Growth, which looks at the impact of economic inequality here in the United States. Thank you so much, Sarah Miller, for joining us here on Plugged In. This is a fascinating topic. But I guess I want to get your take on what's wrong with Facebook. Is it just too big? What's wrong with it?
Lots of things are wrong with Facebook, but the root of the problem is that Facebook is a monopoly that is not accountable to its users and is able to manipulate what billions of people think based on curating information flows that they control. So there's two things. One is its market power, right? Users cannot go to another platform really anymore. They own WhatsApp, they own Instagram, right? A lot of people don't realize that. And the second thing is their business model, which is based on harvesting deeply intimate information about people that use the platform, and even those that don't, given their reach across the entire internet through various tools, and then using that information to allow others to manipulate them. That could be as kind of simple as trying to get you to buy a new pair of shoes that you were browsing on Macy's last night, or it could be trying to influence your political views in ways that are very dangerous.
So what is the proposed solution? I mean, how do we fix a problem that has become so big? It's a monopoly. You're absolutely right. Nothing you do, if it's not posted on Facebook, it didn't happen sometimes, right?
Right. I mean, I would say not only is it a monopoly, I think it's probably the world's most dangerous monopoly, maybe along with Google, because it has the ability to curate the information that people get to make decisions in their everyday lives, political choices and otherwise. And their algorithms generally are executed in a way to where you're seeing the most sensationalist and engaging content, because that's what keeps you hooked, and that's what keeps them making money off of advertising.
How much information does Facebook have on us? How much of our personal information is at risk just by virtue of being on Facebook?
So it's not even about being on Facebook. You can be on Facebook. Obviously, they'll know everything that you do on Facebook, whether that's private messaging or otherwise, but they also track people all across the internet. So every web page that has a like button, and this is millions and millions of web pages, feeds information back to Facebook on whether or not you visited that page, right? If you have an app on your mobile phone, Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp, they can track your location. So not only do they know where you're going on
they know where you are,
the
what
internet,
you like, what you buy.
They know where you're going, they know where you are. The technology to collect and synthesize this sort of data is extraordinary at this point. And then all of that data is then processed in a way to where people can manipulate you in the most intimate ways.
So how do we protect ourselves short of unplugging? I mean, is that what you have to do? Log off?
I think
what
we are advocating for is that our democratic institutions step in and put some basic solutions in place. So the first solution is to basically eradicate Facebook's monopoly power. So that means reversing some mergers that were wrongly decided, setting Instagram apart, setting WhatsApp apart, spinning those companies off, putting rules in place that would allow new startups that could compete on privacy. A lot of people forget this, but when Facebook first launched, it was launched in terms of competing with MySpace on privacy, and that's how it started to gain a user base. So just making sure that startups can compete on privacy and other issues, and then finally, our Congress needs to step in and put in place real privacy rules. It's long overdue for that. So those are the three things that we're advocating.
So you're saying the
for.
burden right now is on government to do something about it?
Yes, I think that it's great if you sign up from Facebook to protect yourself. It's still limited because of their ability to track you around the internet, even if you're not a Facebook user. I am.
You are on Facebook?
I am. I don't use my
account very much. And you don't feel guilty about that?
Look, I think it's
a tool, right?
I don't feel guilty because I'm out there advocating for fixing this problem at the root level. We as users shouldn't feel guilty about it, but our democratic institutions need to step up to the plate.
But every now and then, shut it off.
I think that's a good idea.
Sarah Miller, thank you so much. I wish we had a lot more time to talk to you about this. It's a very important issue, and it could affect our future in big ways. Thank you so much, Sarah Miller, with the Open Markets Institute. Now, we also wanted to take a moment to thank our interns, Joanne Muahed, Aya Sadek, Cameron Couvillon, and Carly Feldenkris for suggesting this episode on the expanding reach of social media, and for all the great research you guys did to get this program to air. These interns have really inspired all of us with their dedication. So we thank you, and kudos to all of you for giving us that suggestion. Now, just a few closing thoughts for our viewers around the globe. By now, you probably know social media is here to stay. And as you've seen over the course of this show, social media does have its upside and its downside. You've seen how some users can become obsessed and even addicted to it, how some have come to depend on clicks and views for their livelihoods. But as the end users of social media, we should perhaps, like most things, practice a little bit of moderation and personal responsibility when we open up our lives to the world. Although staying connected with friends and family is important, stepping away for a breather, for lack of a better word, unplugging every once in a while is probably a really good thing. But we urge you to stay plugged in and make sure you have all the latest information that you need when you need it. Thank you so much for watching.